I wrote this, like, you'd think that I have a lot of trauma from recess, huh? But we all know these kids, right? Like, I knew a kid that would always be like, no, rock, paper, scissors, shoot, I used the gun. It's like, no, you didn't. That's bullshit. They're trying to hustle me in first grade in rock, paper, scissors. Come on. I had some real shitheads at my elementary school. We're gonna talk about RPSing. People don't actually understand what they're doing. A lot of the time people have grasps, like minor grasps or like small notes on how to RPS. A good example of this is like Soul Fire Slash, right? Soul Fire Slash is one of the best ways to describe it, because Soul Fire Slash is one of the simplest RPS like options in the game, but a lot of people can't really wrap their head around how to interact with it. And we're also going to use Kai 6H as an example. So our examples are Soul and Kai. These are the two great examples. These are why these characters are specifically, in my opinion, perfect for RPS. These two examples are fantastic. We're gonna play a bit of a classroom guessing game. Do you know why these two options are great? You do multiple things after. Not entirely true, but you're close. You're close, but it's basically here's what makes these moves good. They have very strong situations where the risk reward is huge, right? Like these are game winnings, right? Like if you get hit by this, like if you get counter hit by Far-Ass and they have 100 meter, you're dead, right? Like I mean, everyone knows that. Kai 6H, on the other hand, is not entirely the same way, but it's close in the sense that Fire Slash on regular hit requires a sort of like, you either need meter or you need a counter hit, right? That's where your damage comes from. So that means if you do not get counter hit and you don't have meter, the risk reward changes drastically, right? But it changes drastically in a way that's not entirely one-to-one with 6H. And this is why it's important, right? These two threats can be almost equal, but depending on the situation, you would probably not think this, right? In fact, the reason why you'd probably not think this is because 6H is way less common as this like sort of threat, right? As this powerful option, right? Kai 6H theoretically can have stronger risk reward than Fire Slash, right? Let's say if you get regular hit in the corner by 6H, right? That would do more damage than a regular hit from Fire Slash, right? But not a lot of people would think about it like that. But that means mid-screen, the damage off 6H is pretty whatever, right? Whereas Fire Slash, it doesn't matter where you are on the screen, it's more about the interactions from Fire Slash. Whereas Kai 6H is way more dependent on spacing or positioning. If you do not consider minor details like screen positioning, you aren't even playing a matchup. A lot of the time, people don't quite actually understand what they're doing with RPS. Like, they get like a gist of it, right? Like, you know, oh, I run Fire Slash pressure. If you get counter hit by Fire Slash, I'm gonna kill you. But a lot of people that defend against it especially do not understand it, right? Right now, right, we can already make a matchup strategy off risk reward with this alone. The correct answer to something like Fire Slash, right? You will not always be able to guess right, first of all, but you can always play around the odds in what gives you the least amount of like risk and the most amount of safety, right? If you are playing against Soul, because of how this works, you don't really need, you can basically make a strategy around interacting with Soul in more passive ways. Backdash, for example, is okay, but of course you run the risk of 5H, right? Run 5H, extremely high reward for him. Like he sends you to like Narnia or something, like you're gonna die. So with that in mind, you know, is it worthwhile to backdash? Probably not. If we can consider the options from Far-Ass along with this, or the other threats along with it, almost everything just off understanding how his Fire Slash works as a threat, usually jumping or RPSing after blocked Fire Slash, usually with FB into 6B, is powerful, right? Because there's two reasons. One, you're not going to be opening yourself up to substantial hits on callout, which is ideal, right? And of course, you can always represent more options. It's just, if your baseline involves taking massive risks, then you're going to be unstable. This, for example, like 6P is very strong because it requires them to specifically call it out, right? And if you are wrong, you do not get counter hit, right? That's the key thing. The key thing is that after FD, they're not going to be able to get anything substantial without meter. If they do not have meter, that means your risk reward is good. Whereas let's say if you mashed like 2k or like 5p, there's a chance that you could just get counter hit, and then once you get counter hit, that opens yourself up to maybe even taking twice the amount of damage. So even though like the situation is still not preferable, you can make these sort of decisions around that sort of risk reward. If you're not considering how these things change in meter, counter hit, whatever, then again, this is a sign you're not considering matchups. And that's something that's also not particularly to be like ashamed of, you know what I mean? Fighting games are learning experiences. It's just a lot of people want to look smarter than they are when it comes to it. It's okay as long as you're willing to be open-minded about that sort of stuff, you know? When it comes to like other characters, it becomes a lot more like complex, right? So Testament Stain State, right? Every hit can give a combo equals their risk reward can actually beat like almost every character in the game, right? Like if you are not stained, the risk reward is whatever. It's actually quite low. If you are, the risk reward is in their favor. Let's look at this from the lens of how consistently can they stain you. It's matchup. It's matchup. With this in mind, it seems odd to think about, right? Because a lot of people think that they're quite bad, but if you again view it from this lens, Testament theoretically could destroy Kai in neutral just off risk reward, right? If every interaction boiled down to Kai in Stain State interacts with Testament, Testament could just win off that alone, right? Just again, raw risk reward. For characters like Testament, Milia, Zato, this is the more important part, because the situation that follows is as equal of importance as the raw risk reward of the interaction. You are, let's say if you get knocked down, right? Like let's say you get hit by 2D. The raw risk reward in that way is like, it's like whatever, right? Like it's like what, like 30 damage. Most 2Ds are going to do like really no damage, but they knock you down, right? But let's think about this from another lens. Zato knocks you down with 2D. You are about to lose, right? This is your game. This is like actually your like his win condition. Just him hitting you with 2D, that's his win condition. And he's designed to be that way, right? It's the same with like Milia, like set play characters in Guilty Gear, they are literally designed to knock you down once and kill you, right? That's not new. Like let's say Soul knocks you down, it forces strike throw. If it forces strike throw, right, this situation goes back to here, right? So like let's say it goes back to 1. Faust knocks you down. He disappears until the next balance patch. This is how risk reward looks like. There are characters who are kind of like middle grounds of this, where they can kind of they have like Oki and then they force strike throw. A good example, Kai, Anji. And their situation is, again, it's dependent on their sort of risk reward, right? Usually characters with like really fucked up offense, you want to consider it less from the interaction of raw risk reward, right? Like so in the case of Jacko, right? Zato, Happy Chaos. Oh, Gold Lewis, thank you, Gold Lewis, 100%. I guess Leo, right? Like these characters, Potemkin, we can go into more subject, like a more discussion over. Viking situationally, these characters, if they knock you down, usually it forces interactions that are just straight up not favorable, or they force you to over respect for consistency, or it just forces an interaction that you have to understand. So in these sort of cases, usually you don't always want to just purely rely on just raw risk reward, because if you do, like for example, some small interactions, like even like a scramble, could directly mean you lose the game, right? When you consider these things, it means you can't view them as linearly, and this is why usually characters like strike throw characters tend to fall off, because usually it becomes a lot easier to understand risk reward as time goes on. These sort of risk reward against these characters, for example, is a lot different than risk reward against these characters. And again, it also depends on meter. It also depends on like screen positioning. For example, like risk reward against against Gold Lewis is a lot worse in the corner versus like let's say mid screen, right? RPS changes not only in meter and situation, or like meter and counter hit, which is a key factor, but what we need to also consider when we talk about characters like this. Usually strike throw characters have not terrible offense mid screen, but it requires them to call you out, whereas these other characters here can be more invalidated through backdash. Not Happy Chaos, ignore him. and sometimes not Zada. But basically, screen positioning can matter more for characters that require more, matters significantly for risk reward. Right? This, when you say it like this, it's like people will be like, oh, of course, like you do more damage in the corner compared to mid screen, right? That's like a given, right? Everyone knows that. Not only just in like where or how you get hit mid screen, it also depends on character length, right? So like, let's say Testament hits you with max range far slash with Stain State. Testament hits you with max range without Stain State. They cannot even RC in combo. So even in this sort of situation, you can see even with meter, it's not always that way, right? Like for example, Kai with max range far slash, almost put with Stain State. You get Sun Dipper with meter combo. For us without meter, small knockdown, pretty, whatever. You can see again, just off, we've already listed 2 interactions. In this case, again, risk reward changes depending on how close to the corner you are. In fact, Strive has one of the simplest ways to understand fighting games, like RPS, like as simple and straightforward as humanly possible, right? And it's as simple as the wall. That's kind of cool, wasn't it? The wall can change things so significantly, but this isn't even just the only thing to consider, right? Wall breaking can reset to neutral. It means that you open yourself up to round start risk reward. Even if a character like Happy Chaos wall breaks Nago can straight up win off this interaction, right? Even though you technically did a lot of damage, the risk that it opened you up to again, because round start is literally the only place Nago could hope to win consistently. The risk reward is essentially so straightforward in this interaction. You are giving up, you could give up like even 80 damage, but you are stable the whole time. You're not taking any risks. It's like when you think about it like that, that's obvious, right? And Happy Chaos also creates the same sort of interaction, right? Testament wall breaks Happy Chaos. It creates an RPS situation. Happy Chaos can straight up win off your decision to wall break. In these 2 situations, considering combos that do not break the wall, usually the wall is less about the benefits and more about the interaction that follows. So like positive bonus does create a other interaction where, depending on your character, they can just kill you. In fact, once Happy Chaos has positive bonus, if he runs offense on you, you have to do something, or he can loop positive bonus until you die, assuming they don't mess it up. But I practice it, and it's essentially a 80-second block string. It's not as direct as, like, you know, don't always break the wall, right? Positive bonus gives you health, or sorry, it gives you resistance, it gives you damage, and it gives you meter. It gives you a guaranteed 50% meter with like the attention pulse gain, which can be huge. So you may have noticed all this time, I've not even entirely discussed RPS. I've discussed risk reward. And the reason for this is because you have to understand risk reward before you can RPS. If you RPS without a purpose, you're basically just like killing yourself. I try to almost always do everything with a purpose. That's why if I do something and you ask me and I'm like, I don't know, then you have permission to beat my ass in the quote retweet. The whole purpose of this is to RPS. It doesn't matter what you think about the balance, right? It doesn't matter what you think about how strong these characters are. The point is, if you don't understand how risk reward works and what makes them strong through it, then you are not playing the matchup. That's all there is to it. Them not getting positive matters that much. It may mean that your strategy may have to change to accommodate that sort of thing, and as a result you may be more focused to not commit as much in the corner compared to mid screen because of how these things change, right? This is what makes characters like, again, Nago, Happy Chaos, Ram extremely powerful, because they can bypass this sort of thing with how strong their combo to the corner kind of cycle is, right? They can almost always get a wall break. So understanding all these things, basically you have to consider how your character uses spades, how your character uses positive bonus, how your character uses risk reward. Like, are they a high damage character? Are they a low damage character, right? These things all matter. Now you also have to consider, what can your opponent's character do? But of course, it's also another situation of how good are they on each side of the screen. All these things matter. If you don't understand this, you won't be able to have a good time RPSing. You can RPS without understanding these things, but you're not going to be able to really be consistent with it. You don't want to really let yourself get put into a situation where you have to choose to commit against something you don't really understand or you don't really know how to play around. In my opinion, in fighting game, the end game goal is to force your opponent to commit to something that you can beat without committing. If you play against some nut job who just does run up DP all the time and I just block it and I punish you, then I'm going to be able to win without like showing my hand, right? It's like you're putting your cards down and I just stare at you and then you implode. That's basically what it's like. One, it gives you information and it leads to this sort of thing happening more. If you aren't taking risks, one, obviously it will change the situation of the game, but it doesn't change that if they're willing to be preemptive or gamble like that, it'll always show again. Or there's like some sort of like tick to make them do it. You can always choose to do nothing. When I competed actively in tournaments, my game plan or my strategy was a lot more thorough on making people hesitate or doubt themselves, specifically to make them more predictable so I could win this way. The benefit of this is inherently risk reward is always in your favor. Let's say they overcommit, they whiff something, whatever case that leads them, like gives you an opening, there's no information on how you play, but it one will show how preemptive they are and how they will commit. I'm doing nothing. I'm sitting on the floor with a bong. I gotta be PG-13 with a smoking device. You run at me to throw me because I'm doing nothing, right? This is the correct sort of solution, right? You can, just by you doing this, it can create an RPS situation, right? But this RPS situation inherently favors me. You have to overcommit to start it. Am I going to run up, throw you, or am I going to reset and just play neutral again? This interaction, I did nothing, right? I won this interaction without even considering it because the risk reward was so in my favor. But understanding all these things are very important because these, one, are not always easy to understand. And if you don't have a solid baseline of how to think about it, you may get frustrated, right? And you may just be like, oh, Leo just flash kicks me every time and that's it, he wins, lol. Leo XD, you know what I mean? But that's basically it. So this is our discussion on risk reward. Tomorrow we'll talk about RPS and going from here, right?